Hey, everybody. Good morning or afternoon or night or whatever it is where you are. I'm Tracy Wallace, and today's webinar is going to be the completion of a webinar that I started last month, and it ended up running quite a bit longer than I had anticipated. It is entirely possible that I talk a lot, and I do not foresee this webinar being quite as long as that one, but at this point, you've just got your name into a drawing for a Surface Pro, so not too bad of a trade-off. As Brittany said, we will be, taking questions. I'll take security-related questions today, answer them to the best of my ability. If there are any questions I don't have the answer to that you asked today, I will make sure that I get back to you. Now, one thing when you do ask questions, if you're in as an anonymous user and I don't get the question, I don't feel comfortable answering that question right away, I can't really get it to you. But I'll also make sure any questions that I don't answer today, I will also go ahead and use those as kind of seed questions for Friday's event, which I'm really looking forward to. So lots of stuff here with our Cloud Week, the INE Cloud Week, and this is one of those elements. So let's go ahead and let's get started with our security recommendations. And what we're going to look at here, get my act together. There we go. First of all, hi, I'm Tracy. Here's my contact information. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this slide. I will tell you, as I always do, that I am desperate for Twitter followers, even though I don't use it as effectively as I probably should. Too much gray hair for that. But, if you want to, you can follow me there. You can send me an email. You can reach out on LinkedIn. Lots of ways to contact me. And I've been doing this a long time. And in fact, am a Microsoft certified Azure Solutions Architect Expert, which is the longest certification title I've ever had. Now, what we're covering today is I'm going to go through and do a little, very, very quick recap of part one. So, if anybody's on that didn't attend part one, you kind of get a feel for what we covered. Also, I want to go back and do a few of those demos because, quite honestly, a couple of those demos didn't quite go the way that I wanted them to. So we're going to take a look at a Bastion connection, and we're also going to take a look at a service endpoint and what that is. All right. And then we're going to get into some new content. We're going to take a look at connectivity. What are the connectivity options between an on-premises environment and the Azure environment? We'll talk about auditing capabilities. And then we'll also take a look at some of the Azure security tools, some of the built-in tools that are available for you for monitoring security and making sure you're getting alerted if things aren't the way they should be, or potentially if your site is under a recognized attack. All right, so let's go ahead and let's dive right in. First thing, and again, this is a bit of a recap from our first one. We talked about identity and all the ways that you can define and protect identity within the Azure environment. And again, I'm not going to rehash all of that. If you're interested, feel free to take a look at the previous webinar if you didn't catch it. But just a quick recap. What are some things, if you are implementing identity management within Azure? First of all, absolutely implement multi-factor authentication. Right? Easiest way to add a nice level of security to your user accounts. Implement Azure Identity Protection, giving you that next level. Absolutely take a look at conditional access. That, for me, is one of the more powerful capabilities you have within the Azure AD identity environment. Always adhere to least privilege. Hopefully, if you're in this webinar, I don't need to describe that. Protect your subscriptions with policy and privileged identity management. Policy is going to let you control what can be created really within your Azure environment, and privileged identity management means that you can keep your users, your accounts at a lower level of access until a higher level is needed, and then there are lots of controls for that. And also, whenever possible, use Azure AD for authentication. It really simplifies security, particularly looking at certain data plane applications such as Azure SQL Database. Will allow you to use a managed identity, for example, which is part of Azure AD, and you can actually have your application securely connect to that database without ever having to have a plain text username and password anywhere. Same thing for security, for example, that I can use Azure AD as my way of controlling access to a storage account. And that way I have the same thing. I never have to take a storage account key or even a shared access signature and worry about that, because I can control all that access through Azure AD. So whenever possible, I think that's a very good thing to be able to do. Now, we also talked about information protection. And really, one of the keys to information protection is encryption. And that is both encryption at rest, which is effectively everywhere now in Azure, both built in, but also the ability to take it above that, for example, by using volume encryption on your virtual machines, storing volume encryption keys that are your keys generated by you, storing them securely in Key Vault, right? But a number of other options that you have. Many things now you don't even have the option as far as encryption at rest. They're just encrypted, but also encrypted communication, particularly at the data layer, but also really at the management layer. And what I want to do is just show you a couple of demonstrations in terms of really protecting access. I'm going to start out with a demonstration that, frankly, I ran in the last demo, but I didn't like the way it ran. So I'm going to go through it again, hopefully make it a little more clear, and it'll be quick. And then I also want to go and rerun Azure Bastion, because maybe for the folks that are coming in here and didn't see the previous webinar, I think that is one of those absolutely key and foundational security capabilities that you can really use right away within Azure. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these demonstrations. So I'm going to hopefully pull up. There we go. My Azure dashboard. Now, in this Azure dashboard, I have an app service. And I have associated with this app service, I'll blow that up just a little bit so we can see a little bit easier. I have the built-in domain, which is the assigned domain, which is your the name that you give it, .azurewebsites.net. But I have also associated a custom domain name, webinar.ine-demo.com. But I do not have a certificate for that secondary domain. And right now, if I go to TLS SSL settings, right now I am not requiring HTTPS. Okay? Now, what that means is if I go and I'm going to take the URL. Now, the cool thing is, because I have a custom domain, it gives that as my default URL. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to open up an in private window. And I am going to navigate to webinar.com. Now, this is going to an incredibly sophisticated web application that basically checks whether or not you are connecting on a secure connection. And because I'm not forcing a secure connection and I don't have a certificate for this particular domain, it's going over straight HTTP. Okay, now I can change that. If I go back to my TLS SSL settings, and this is kind of an interesting behavior. Okay, so now I'm requiring HTTPS. I'm going to go and do exactly the same thing again. Open up my in private window, and I'm going to paste and go. Now, the really interesting thing is it's going to try to force it to HTTPS, and it's going to tell me that I'm going over HTTPS, but it is in private. Okay, fine. I have no concerns about security at all. There we go. So technically, it is going over HTTPS. The application recognizes that. But as you can see, it's no longer allowing me to go over HTTP. And obviously, in your environment, you're not going to have, hopefully, domains that you don't have the certificates to. I have it set up that way explicitly so that I can demonstrate this, frankly. So you can see what happens when it can go over HTTP and then when it can't. Okay, so just a very simple example of one way to protect your information. And it really is, I mean, you have backup and restore capabilities, of course, but encryption is one of those absolute key capabilities, key aspects of data protection. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to talk about, hopefully I'm going to get this right. Nope, did not. There we go. Okay, I want to talk about Azure Bastion for just a moment. Okay, and here's the idea with Azure Bastion. I've got a VM, okay? And we'll just say VM. And I've got me sitting over here that wants to connect to that VM. This is me. It's Tuesday, I'm smiling, I'm wearing a hat, everything's great. Okay, now one way that I could do that is I could provide a public IP address, and I could say, okay, cool, that's a Windows VM. I'm going to go over to that public IP address. I'm going to go on port 3389, which just about everybody knows. Okay, and I connect. Great, over the internet. That's not great. That's terrible. Okay, I absolutely don't want to do that, right? Because if I can do that, so can anyone else. So we don't want to do that. So instead, what I want to do is I want to connect up to this in a much more secure way. And one way that I can do that is actually through Azure and something called Azure Bastion. Okay, so we're going to go there and label this Bastion. And what Bastion is, sometimes you'll hear people refer to it as a jump box. Okay, and really what this is essentially a completely managed jump box. But what's also really cool about this is that I'm connecting to Bastion. Bastion is giving me a pipeline into the VM. Now that pipeline is either going to be RDP for Windows or it's going to be SSH. But two key things, I'm not going directly to the VM. I'm going to port 443 HTTPS into Bastion. Okay, so I've got that. And Bastion is going to be controlled through Azure AD role-based access control. Right? So now I've got this connection into my Azure virtual machines. I'm going over the public internet, right? But it's secured in a way that I really can't do directly with a public IP. There's ways around that with a public IP, like just-in-time access, but I feel that the Bastion is really a much more straightforward way of doing that. And so I've already got this set up, so I'm not going to spend, make you wait a whole lot. Whoops. That was pretty cool. Took off the whiteboard. Didn't take off my drawing. Okay. What I'm going to do is kind of show you how that works. Hopefully. There we go. All right. I'm going to go into my resources. And I've already got, like I said, I've already got Bastion set up. Okay, but I'm going to go to my webinar VM. This is just a virtual machine. It's running Windows. And I'm going to say I want to connect to it. Well, rather than use an RDP, because I don't have a direct public IP address, you can actually see that over here. There's no direct public IP address to this virtual machine. I say I want to connect via Bastion. Now, if you don't already have Bastion set up, it's going to tell you you need to set it up, but I already set that up. Go to student, put in my password, and connect. And it's going over, it's staying in my browser, but I'm now connected to my Windows machine. Okay, so this is my virtual machine. It's running in Azure. I'm not really gonna really do too much with this, but I could, open a browser, go into Server Manager, whatever I need to do. I've got administrative access to this, but it's not direct over RDP. It's not over port 3389. I'm actually going through the Azure portal. I'm going through HTTPS. I'm using Azure role-based access control, so it's a much more secure approach. One thing I will tell you is that the Bastion does cost money, right? This is not a free service, and the good news is you only need one Bastion host per virtual network. So conceptually, if you've got your virtual networks connected and you have to connect to them over the internet, you could use a Bastion host to get into your environment and then kind of go from there pretty easily. All right. Let's go ahead and go back to our presentation here. All right, so that was TLS and Azure Bastion. Got both of those. Okay, now that was just, again, a little bit of recap of what we covered. Again, I did spend about an hour and a half going over topics. There's much more there, but I just wanted to hit some highlights. And again, I promised the folks that have been in the last one that a couple of demos that didn't go quite squarely for me, I would redo those. Speaking of which, there's one more demo I'm going to do at the end, which is on service endpoints. And that one was the one that for some reason flummoxed me a little bit, which was bad, except I do get to use the word flummoxed now, which is always good. Anyways, I digress. Let's get into some new topics. We're going to talk about network protection, okay? And network protection, I think if you're an INE student, you are probably familiar with network protection because we've been doing networking for the last 16 years. But if not, we do have lots of content on networking, both in terms of on-premises as well as in Azure now. But network protection, what are the ways that you protect your network? Oh, and I'm not going to do it last, I'm going to do it right about now. You can protect via firewalling, right? And there's built-in firewalling in Azure, whether it's the simplest network security group, or if it's Azure Firewall service, if it's the application gateway service, or kind of the global version of application gateway, which is Azure Front Door. Whether you're looking to do firewalling at a lower tier within the networking stack via Azure Firewall or NSG, or at a higher level for HTTP and HTTPS using Front Door or application gateway, those are all options that are available to you to protect your information within the Azure environment, to protect your network, right? To control access into your network from the outside. In addition to that, there are a large number of network virtual appliances or virtual network appliances, whichever way you want to say that. Right? But these are appliances that are from well-known vendors, whether it's Cisco or F5 or Palo Alto or Juniper. And they have created virtual appliances, virtual firewalls, virtual VPN gateways that if you are, let's say, a Palo Alto shop and you want to continue to use their products, their technologies, you can actually extend that into Azure. So lots of capabilities there. Now, one of the things that I love talking about, because this is something that quite frankly, for a good several years was a bit of a weakness on Microsoft's part, and that is protecting your platform as a service capabilities. Okay, and I'm going to draw this out just a little bit, just so you kind of have an idea of what we have here. Okay, here's the idea. Let's say that I've got a platform as a service. Let's say I've got just SQL Server. Okay, so I've got an Azure. Oops, pretty useful if I actually change my tool here. There we go. Just let you kind of try and figure out what that little box is for. It's for nothing. So let's say I've got an Azure SQL database, and it's running, we'll say an Azure SQL Server, and that's running an Azure SQL database, right? All managed by Azure. Too many A words. Okay, now, by default, that has always had a public endpoint. Now, I can go in and, of course, I've got authorization control, but that's still a public endpoint, still a public IP address, which means that folks out there, the neutral expression, because they're essentially bad guys, capped to the back there, they can access that. And that's always been a little bit problematic. Okay, but now what Microsoft has is Microsoft has service endpoints. And you have public service endpoints and private service endpoints, which do very similar things, but they work a little bit differently. And what they allow you to do very simply is to just throw up a solid firewall in front of your platform as a service resources. And that means that anybody that's coming through that's not part of a network that's been identified as being allowed to access that resource, or if it's coming from a place that doesn't have a predefined firewall rule that would allow it. So I could, for example, allow my client IP address, even if I'm not on an approved virtual network, right? If you're not either on a virtual network that's been set up, or if you're not on an IP address that's been allowed via firewall rule, you can't even connect. It doesn't matter if you have the username and password of the administrator or whatever, the connection key, doesn't matter. You're locked out. And that's really the way it should be. And this is something that at this point is pretty much effectively available, as far as I know off the top of my head, for certainly all of the major platform as a service offerings. So your Azure SQL database, your storage account, Cosmos DB, and many more. Okay, what I want to do now is show you how that works. All right, let's clear this. Okay, and let's get out a whiteboard there. There we go. So many things to do. All right, so now, just so you know that I'm not completely out of my tree on this, we've got the service endpoints. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at that. And to do this, I'm going to go back to my Azure environment, and I have a storage account. I really wish I wouldn't have closed that virtual machine, but that's okay, because we can go through the whole thing again. All right, in my storage account, I have a container I created called demo, and I have uploaded a file to that. And I'm right now running on my machine locally, okay? And I can fully access this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to firewalls and virtual networks. And it doesn't say service endpoint here. Now, if you're doing this from the command line, it actually does pretty much say that. But here, I'm saying, you know what? I want to allow selected networks. And I have already configured a network here, Webinar VNet, and I've already pulled in the subnet because I was going to make sure this worked. All right. And I could add more though, right? So if I have another network that I want to allow access, I could go and pick another network in my Sentinel network, pick a subnet. Now, there's a two-part process to setting up service endpoints. One is your virtual network, and really actually at the subnet level, you have to set up a service endpoint for a particular type of resource, in this case, for storage accounts. And that's going to say, okay, traffic can go from this virtual network to storage accounts. Okay? You also have to go into a specific storage account and allow traffic from that virtual network. Now, going through the Azure interface, going through the portal, I can do both of those things at the same time. Now, in addition to security, another thing that's pretty cool with the endpoint is that it optimizes the routing between any machine on that virtual network and whatever service you are setting up. And I really didn't mean to actually enable that. I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, so it saved my setting. It's going to take a little while for that Sentinel VNet to actually process, but that's fine because, like I said, I just wanted to show you that and not actually do it. That should not mess us up too bad. Go ahead. I was rambling enough. It would let me add it and save that. So now I have access from there, even though I'm not going to use it. All right, now remember, I can't. Oh, well, I could. Well, I've done that. Let's check this out. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go to containers. There's my container. And there we go. Authorization failure. Right? I no longer can access, even though I am a subscription owner. That is what I wanted. Now, let's see if I can get to that from a virtual machine that is on the virtual network and subnet that I have set up a service endpoint to this storage account for. So I'm going to go back and connect back up to that, pretending like I meant to close it so I could go through this whole process again. Connect. All right, and we'll just bring this up. And it magically comes directly into my Azure portal. And remember, I'm now in the virtual machine. So I'm going to go to my storage account from within the virtual machine. I'm going to go to containers. I'm going to go to demo. And now I can see the contents of that from the virtual machine where I cannot see it from my own desktop. And that's really what service endpoints do. I think they're a fantastic addition. They actually don't cost anything. So this is one of those capabilities that you really need to start implementing within the Azure environment. If you're already in the Azure environment, or if you're moving to it, make sure you implement this from the beginning. Okay. There we go. Now I've done, so that was the last demo that I wanted to make sure I redid. Now we're going to talk about connectivity. So we've talked about kind of securing down the network. Now I want to talk about, okay, well, how exactly do we connect up to the network? Okay. And this is really about being in an on-premises environment. So I've got my on-premises machine, I've got Azure. How am I going to go about connecting those up? And there's really two primary ways with kind of a combination of both. One is via a VPN connection. So I can go and say, you know what? There we go. I want to set up a VPN. Now to set up the VPN, I'm going to set up a VPN device on my on-premises, and I'm going to set up a VPN gateway in my Azure environment. So this is my VPN gateway. And this would be some on-premises VPN appliance. And what I'm going to do, furthermore, is in the Azure environment, I am going to create what's called a local network gateway. Again, sorry, new tools. Say L, local network gateway, okay? And what the local network gateway has, it simply has the public endpoint of my on-prem environment, and it also has IP, local IP information. So what are the local IP address ranges? Okay, and that is really referring to this. It's always for me a little bit confusing, right? But I go in and really I just set that up. Now I'm going to have to do the same configuration on the internal side. And in fact, we actually did a webinar on this, I think back in March. If you're interested, you can go to our YouTube page. I did this with a great instructor, Keith Bogart. If you're an INE person, you're probably familiar with Keith, fantastic. He set up the on-premises side and I set up the Azure side. And let me just tell you, it made me even more glad that I'm an Azure person because my work was much easier than his. Now, once you have this set up, what you have to do is define a connection. Okay, and that's really where you're going to set up those VPN settings. And in fact, I actually have a list of the settings that can be set up. Now, this is something that is really an improvement over what we used to have in Azure. Azure used to be very tightly tied in terms of what it could do. There were certain settings across the various components of a connection, of a VPN connection, that were just preset, and you would have to go and match whatever you had on your local environment with what was in Azure. Now, Azure has policies. While it doesn't necessarily cover absolutely every option that another system, your on-premises VPN appliance would have, it really covers quite a wide range. And we found, in fact, that we had absolutely no problem connecting between the on-premises, in our case, we're using Cisco ASA, and kind of an older one, between that and the Azure environment. Okay? And again, I'm not going to go through all these, but you can see the various options that you have. You can set that up via policy. And in fact, if we go one more time, because why not? Just flip over, see if I can get that. There we go. I know you can't see this yet, but you're about to. Okay. This is actually the script that I use in the webinar to connect. Okay, and what I did was first I defined a policy. This is some Azure, let's see, what is that? PowerShell. Almost forgot it was PowerShell. This is some Azure PowerShell. All right, and I set up the IK encryption, the integrity, the DH group. Okay, now these are all by default IKAV2. You actually have the option of going with either IKAV2 or IKAV1 if you use what's called a standard tier of a VPN gateway. We were actually using the basic tier because it's cheaper, and so we were just using the IKAV2. Right? And then really what I do is I just say, okay, I want to get a reference to my gateway, right? That device I've got in Azure. And I also want to get a reference to that local network gateway that has kind of just that basic connection information for on-prem. And I set up a connection. Okay? And really, I've got right here, in addition to all the other information, the policy, right? So it's very simple to do. I have all these settings up here. If I want to, you don't have to, you can go to defaults. So I set up a policy, and then when I set up a connection, I simply use it. And that's really all there is to setting up that connectivity on the Azure side. All right. So that is one way to connect up. Now, another way to connect up is through ExpressRoute. Okay? And really the key difference when we're using ExpressRoute is that ExpressRoute is going to go over a private network over a provider. Okay, so I've got, and I'm just going to put ER up here. I've got ExpressRoute. All right, I contract with a provider. There are providers, multiple providers in every single region that Azure serves. And so you could go out if you're already using a, let's say, a WAN provider, and they more than likely will also have the ability to let you connect up to Azure. There's actually also now a direct connect where you can connect directly to Azure without going through a provider. Of course, that's going to involve a fair bit of hardware and cost, as well as it's not going to be super cheap, but it is very fast. Okay, but that's really pretty much it. I'm going through over ExpressRoute. Okay, now what ExpressRoute actually is, a couple details about that. I mean, the concept is pretty straightforward. Okay, this can be either layer 2 or layer 3, and there's two peerings. These two peering things here are kind of important: Microsoft peering and private peering. What they do, it's sort of like they were really kind of the precursor to endpoints. Microsoft peering makes sure that anything that's on-prem, so anything that's on that on-prem side of an ExpressRoute, if you go to either a public endpoint of a platform as a service Azure resource, so example, again, a storage account or Azure SQL database, with Microsoft peering, that's not going to go over the public internet. That's going to route through ExpressRoute. And that's really what one thing that Microsoft peering does. Also, any other Microsoft cloud offerings, so if you've got Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365, used to be Office 365, then that also will route through ExpressRoute. And then you also have private peerings. And what private peerings do is it allows you to connect to virtual networks. So the private IP addresses of virtual networks going over the ExpressRoute environment. Now, with ExpressRoute, it uses BGP. So you're going to configure your on-prem, you're going to configure BGP for your on-prem. You'll have instructions on how to do it on both sides to make sure that everything is connected correctly. All right. You also support service endpoints, in particular private endpoints. If you're using private service endpoints, that's going to pick up your on-prem automatically. If you're using public endpoints, you actually have to add the IP address endpoints of your specific ExpressRoute circuit. Okay. ExpressRoute also has its own encryption, MACsec encryption, and you have the ability to actually run VPN encryption on top of ExpressRoute. Okay, and the way that would work, not really, frankly, 100% sure why I had this. Well, I can draw it out. It's pretty simple. Okay, the way this would work is you would have your on-prem environment. I didn't already pre-draw the pretty boxes, so that's my on-prem, right? And I've got my Azure environment. And really specifically in Azure, I've got a VNet. Now, for speed, throughput, I set up ExpressRoute. But even though that's a private circuit, I don't want to depend on ExpressRoute for my encryption. So I can simply set up a VPN gateway on the Azure side and have a VPN appliance on the OP on-prem, as opposed to Ocean Pacific, if anybody's old enough to know what that is. And essentially now my traffic is going to go through the VPN. VPN is going to be routed over ExpressRoute to the other VPN, right? And it's going to be encrypted with IKEv2 most likely. And that's really what VPN over ExpressRoute is. So it gives you this ability to combine the two and have an easier approach to having a highly secure, also fast, also private connection between your on-premises environment and an Azure virtual network. I'm also going to throw in here, I don't have it listed out, but it's an interesting new capability. If you're doing this, if you've got a number of remote environments, maybe they're in different regions, you want to be able to connect all this up and make it a little bit simpler. There's now something called the Azure Virtual WAN. And what the Azure Virtual WAN does is it lets you centrally manage all of these different types of connections. It can be ExpressRoute, it can be VPN, it can also be peering connections between different virtual networks in Azure, and lots of cool stuff that are added to. Of course, it costs money. It's not a free service. But one of the really cool things is that they've worked with many vendors as partners, and you can actually automate the entire process, including automating the setup of the on-premises appliance, which is pretty nice. Okay, so that's what we have with our connectivity options. Next, back to the broader security topic, I want to talk about Azure Auditing. Okay. So auditing is something that I think we all know is critical if you're looking at forensic investigation of things that have happened. Not only that, but you want to be able to get ahead of things. You need audit logs to have that. And quite simply, they're built-in audit logs across a number of services within the Azure environment. For example, database auditing. Azure SQL database has its own auditing. You can turn that on very easily, and you audit out typically to a storage account, and then you can view exactly what's happening. You can do that at the server level as well as at the database level. There's also a lot of network protection. You actually have this service, and I honestly don't know why Microsoft kind of tucks this away a little bit. It's a very powerful capability, Network Watcher. It's built into Azure. And one of the things Network Watcher will do is it will actually let you packet sniff on your Azure networks. Now, you could set up something like Wireshark, but this is built in. And it's a very cool capability. And you can also do things like logging and auditing your network security group connectivity and how often your NSG rules are being fired off. Lots of capabilities there. Microsoft also has something called Azure Sentinel. This is actually something I'll talk a moment or two about in the next section. And what that really is it's an SEIM, right? Security event and incident management that is built into Azure. It rides on top of a what's called a log analytics workspace. And you can enroll things like virtual machines and databases. And it's looking at a higher level using machine learning and artificial intelligence to spot different types of attacks and to set up alerts and incidents. A very powerful capability. There's also tons of third-party capabilities, of course, that can do similar things. And Azure AD as an identity provider, of course, also allows you to audit. Simple as that. All right. And what I want to do just really quickly, just to give you an idea of how really pervasive auditing is, I'm going to go ahead into Azure SQL database auditing and show you how you would set that up. All right, so here is my Azure environment. And I'm going to go, I have a SQL server that I use all the time. And here's my SQL server, faithful SQL server. And if I go into my SQL server, I want to set up auditing for my SQL server. Let's make that a little bit bigger. All right, so to do that, come down here to security. There's a number of security features actually that you can use with Azure SQL databases. But notice my endpoints, my firewalls and virtual networks, advanced data security, which is applying machine learning, looking for patterns. Okay, and what you can see is that I've got auditing set up. Okay, and I'm auditing to a storage account. I can also audit to log analytics, and I can audit to Event Hub. Now, those are in preview. I'm pretty sure they've been in preview for well over a year. Sometimes things seem to just languish in preview just a little bit. But in any case, I am auditing my connectivity. Okay, and if I go to my databases, I've got a database in here. And go my demos database. Okay, I can see that the demo database also has auditing capabilities. So you can audit individual databases if you don't want to audit at the server level. And I do have auditing on, which really isn't terribly necessary here, but it does give me one kind of nice little tool. Right? And you'll notice it says server level auditing is on, right? But I can also turn auditing on here and I have the same options. Now, what does that auditing do? Okay, well, I'm going to go into a query editor. And I am going to connect up. I don't have the rights to connect up. So, well, let's see. This will be a fun test. So it lets me log in there. All right, if this is going to, might be, my local settings might be preventing it. Connection to the server. So clearly I had this one well prepared. I generally do. All right, what am I got to go back up to my server. Actually, you know what? We won't even do that. Let's go to auditing. And see if I still have any audit logs. I had practiced everything before. This one I do all the time. All right, it's been a little bit cranky, but what I'm going to see here is I am going to see every activity, every action that I've taken against this, including running any kind of, there we go, outstanding, including running any kind of query against it. So if I'm trying to retrieve data, if I'm trying to connect, all that information is very easy to see in the audit logs. I'm not going to hold you up on that one. Okay. We have time. I will get back and show you that, but I want to make sure we have time to answer questions, and I'm not going to keep people for 2 hours. All right, now we're going to talk about some of the Azure security tools. So these are some of the things that are in Azure. They're built in, and they give you the ability to centrally manage and secure your resources in Azure. Simple as that. And so let's just go ahead and let's take a look at some of these. First of all, we have the Azure Security Center. This is kind of the mainstay. It's been around for quite a while, and it's really where you're going to go first to keep an eye on your resources, on your data, on your security in Azure. And it's evolved, which is fantastic. Some of the things you can do, for example, we have a security score, and you'll see mine in a minute, and mine's horrific, but that's intentional. It's a demo environment, and that way I have something to show. That's what I'm going to go with. So we'll just say that. All right. But it's going to say, okay, here's how you're doing, right? And it's going to break that down, and it's going to let you drill down and see where you have issues and even possibly be able to fix those issues. You've got security policy. there's tons of built-in policy, and you've got audit policies that say, okay, for example, I want to take a look at any virtual machine that has a direct public IP address access over 3389 or over 22, right? Port 3389 for Windows or port 22 for SSH into a Linux box or other ports as well. Okay, so tons of those, and they're running automatically. They're running all the time in the background. In fact, the policy is what defines a score. You also have security alerts you can set. And security alerts also are triggered by security policy. So if I want to know, okay, do I have any virtual machines where there is direct access? I could set up an alert for that. You can also set up an incident alert so that if something is in fact happening, you can get an email. Okay, pretty cool stuff there. There's security automation. Something happens, you want to run it, and that can be tied to a security alert. Again, let's say that it goes out and it's auditing, and Security Center finds through its policy that you've got a virtual machine that's not protected. Security Center itself is not going to be able to actually fix that, but you could have a logic app that runs and could make modifications to your resources, which is pretty cool stuff. Security Center also supports just-in-time access, which means that if you're not using, for example, Azure Bastion, and you need public direct access to your virtual machines, you can control that access in a just-in-time environment. It actually controls network security groups, which are just that very simple firewall level at the virtual network, or actually subnet level. And it's going to typically disallow traffic, but then you can have it temporarily in a time-limited fashion, grant access to a specific location, for example. So if I'm working at home and I absolutely have to get in over the public internet to a virtual machine, rather than having that port open all the time, I can go through just-in-time access and just get a direct rule, an exception, if you will, that's specifically for me for a specific amount of time. Provided, of course, I have been granted rights to do so and a process has been followed. Okay. Now, one thing to know about Security Center is that there are two tiers of Security Center. There's the basic tier, and then there's the standard tier. Basic is free. Standard, you're paying for every resource that is protected by the standard tier. Now, that's important because all of those things down there, all the really cool stuff, requires standard tier. Not a big deal, but it is something that you should be aware of. Okay, next tool we have is Azure Sentinel. Azure Sentinel is the SEIM product that is integrated directly into the Azure environment. Now, it actually works in conjunction with a log analytics workspace. Okay. And what it does is actually pretty simple. And we're going to go and do a whiteboard here real quick. Okay. So let's say that I've got a few resources here. So I've got a VM and let's just say a storage account. Storage account is a terrible example. Let's say I've got a VM and I've got a SQL database. And what I do is I configure those to send their diagnostic data, their log data, into a log analytics workspace. We'll say A, W, so you don't have to watch me write all that out. Then what you do is you define a Sentinel workspace. And you connect that Sentinel workspace to your log analytics. Now, what you're doing is you're flowing your diagnostics through a normal channel, and then those diagnostics are being fed into Sentinel, which is processing those diagnostics and allowing you and allowing the built-in machine learning, artificial intelligence to analyze patterns. Okay, and there's solutions that you add to Sentinel that allow it to do various things. For example, I can go in on Windows and I can have my Windows event logs. I can set up a solution that's going to flow those to be analyzed by Sentinel. And Sentinel has its own dashboard, and it's a powerful product. Again, it is frankly one of your options for an SEIM if you're using Azure as your primary environment, of course. All right. Okay. Also, if you don't want to use what's built into the Azure environment, Azure has partnered with several major security vendors, and some of those are listed here. Checkpoint, Fortinet, Cisco are all partners with Azure, which means that they've got products that are designed to work with Azure, that are designed to integrate with Azure, and to make the process of adding their products and using their products with Azure easier. And really, it's as simple as that. There's also a tool, Azure Firewall Manager, and Azure Firewall Manager allows you to, it's in preview as of April 2020, and frankly, it's really not that much right now, but it is there. Keep an eye on it. It only works with a couple of firewalls right now, and truth be told, I didn't find a lot of usability for it, but it is something that's just in preview, so you may find more use for it as you go forward. All right, now what I'd like to do, and this in fact will round out the demos. I'm just going to take you through Security Center, and again, please understand I have an abysmal security score. It doesn't mean I don't understand security. It just means A, I don't feel like paying for anything, and B, it makes for better demos. All right, let's take a look here. All right, I am going to go to my Azure Security Center. Now, we have content on Azure Security Center, and we have content that really goes through this in a couple of different environments. Obviously, this is a webinar. I'm not going to go deep into this in any way, shape, or form. But what I do want to show you that I'm very proud of is my security score, right? And so you can see right away that A, my security score is terrible, but also that I can go and say, okay, whoa, why is this so bad? I've actually got regulatory compliance. I've got quite a number of recommendations to try and make my security score better. But I can actually click on that, and it is a dashboard, as you would expect, and I can drill down, right? And saying, okay, so how are you doing across the board? Well, I have 3 subscriptions, production, development, and demonstrations. Production and development are absolutely horrific. There's 0 score. But there's actually nothing in those. I just use those for management groups, so they pretty much stay the way they are. But INE demonstrations, that's not super great. Okay? But I can then drill down into that and say, okay, what is going on here? And it actually has recommendations. Okay, so here are all the things that I'm not doing that I should be doing, although this one is false because I actually don't have any things that are violating that. It's saying internet-facing virtual machines should be protected with network security groups. I can actually drill down into that. It's going to tell me exactly which machines are affected, okay? And so, oh, actually that is valid because I do have all 3 of those machines running right now. So there you go, just an example of one of the things you can do with Security Center. There's so much more that you can do in here. Again, we actually do cover this in fair depth, in pretty good depth, I think, in actually several of our courses within INE. All right, that's a quick thing. Now, wrapping up the content here, what are some overall recommendations for you within the Azure environment? Okay, first of all, and again, already saw this, but I really do think it is worth going over again, protect your identities, right? Use multi-factor authentication. I don't know if I said what MFA is, and I don't think I did, and I apologize for that. Multi-factor authentication is MFA, multi-factor authentication. They've now met, all right? So protect your identities, okay? And, use MFA, particularly for any of your administrators, okay? Global administrators can use MFA regardless of what tier of Azure AD you have. If you have one of the higher tiers, if you have Azure AD Premium P2, take a look at using things like identity protection and other capabilities. This one should be absolutely, of course, limit access. That's what you're going to do. Huge one to talk to your developers about. Using Azure AD, what you're doing there is you're simply eliminating one need for storing sensitive information, right? There's lots of ways to secure that sensitive information, but the best way to secure it is not to have it. So things like connections, when I can use Azure AD, I no longer have to worry about, worrying about that sensitive data, that connection data. Okay, implement service endpoints, always block traffic that doesn't need to go to your platform as a service offering. It is as simple as that. I will tell you right now, the way it's implemented, just like if you're going through the portal, is a little bit inconsistent. The way that I set it up for a storage account, just the nomenclature is a little different than the way I set it up for, say, a Azure SQL database or Cosmos DB. Okay, but definitely look at that. Secure administrative access to your virtual machines. Again, take a look at Bastion. It can protect an entire virtual network and give indirect access through HTTP, which is role-based access controlled through Azure. Very cool capability there. Otherwise, look at things like just-in-time access. Okay? Monitor, alert, and audit. Right? Take a look at Security Center. Take a look, if not Security Center, third-party tools, and make sure that you've got security set up. It is absolutely possible to set security up correctly in the cloud. And frankly, it doesn't matter whether it's Azure or if it's AWS or Google or any of the other providers, right? It is, however, commitment upon you to actually set that up. So make sure you do that. Similar to implementing your service endpoints, use your firewalls. And you know, one of the things, and I say that, and hopefully everybody here, everybody that's listening to this is aware of the necessity of that. But, you know, use firewalls. The problem is a lot of times people are like, oh, okay, I can just, you know, pop off a virtual machine, pop it up into Azure, and I'm good. I'm done. Not really, right? You got to make sure it's secure, just like you have to make sure that every endpoint that's in your on-premises environment is secure. Treat Azure exactly the same way, right? You just have some different options, but you actually still have the options probably that you're using on-prem, right? Because there's a number of vendors that have virtual network appliances in Azure, okay? And again, Microsoft is already partnering with many security vendors, making it easier to take their solutions and extend them or port them into the Azure environment, right? And so the moral of that story is, if you're already using a security vendor, if you're already using tools that you are comfortable with and you believe in, right, it is highly likely that those tools will port into Azure. And it's also possible that, you know, there's already a path that's designed to make it easier for you to port those into Azure. Okay, so do that. Another thing to keep in mind, always analyze costs and benefits of any solution, right? There are some really cool things that you have in Security Center, but you do have to pay for them. And, you know, it's $15 per virtual machine per month right now. And Microsoft is very upfront about pricing and getting you that information. You can always go to a pricing page for Security Center, and it'll show you exactly how much it costs to protect at the standard tier all of the different resources. And that's true with anything, right? Sentinel has costs associated with it. Certainly third-party tools are going to have licensing costs associated with it, possibly processing costs. And so it's great as, you know, an instructor to say, hey, make sure you go and you use Sentinel and you use Azure Security Center at the standard tier and you protect everything. But also, of course, you have to weigh that, like I said, with the cost. All right, and so those are big picture my recommendations. Now, there was the SQL Server that didn't quite go right, but if you want to hang out to the very end, I'll redo that. It's really just, I'm going to log in, I'm going to generate some activity, and then I can go to the audit log, and I'll see every bit of activity, including logging in and writing queries. It's not really that critical. So what I'd really much rather do, and I haven't even looked at these yet, is I would like to take a look at some of your questions. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and shift directly into question mode. Now, I noticed that, oh, somebody could not see my screen and audio. Can someone give me a man? I hope that is no longer the case. Can someone give me a quick message if they can see my screen and audio in the chat? Okay, good. Whew. Okay, thank you. That was a bit concerning. All right, let's see. Thank you all very much. Appreciate that. Now, there was one question in the chat. Are you guys planning an Azure Sentinel training? So that's a really good question. I am currently working on content for Azure security, one topic of which, one video of which will be Azure Sentinel. Hopefully, and this is quite frankly down the line, I've been in talks with one of our InfoSec instructors, and he is creating content on cloud security for our InfoSec training. And what we want to set up is I'm going to set up a system, I'm going to monitor it with Sentinel, and he's going to do some pen testing. However, that is something that I can't promise you is going to come up any particular time. That is something I personally am really looking forward to. So yes, we're going to cover it. All right, we're not going to go as deep in the initial covering as I would like to. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but as I would like to. Yeah, it is getting covered. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and shift over to, looks like I've got about 7 questions. I'm going to pull them up there. Okay, and all right, 2 very good questions. First one, can multiple users access the Bastion host simultaneously like a terminal server? Yes. I am not sure what the total for that is, so I am going to subject you to a quick search. And I'm going to subject you to the search because this is a page absolutely everybody should know. That is the Azure limits, which is going to be the Azure subscription, somewhere around here, limits and quotas. Man, I haven't been to this page in a while. All right, and we are going to do a quick search on Bastion. All right, there you go. Very simple. Not sure if you can see this or not. And I did the wrong thing. Let's try that again. All right, so Azure Bastion limits, right now, it's 25 concurrent RDP connections, 50 concurrent SSH connections, which may vary due to other ongoing RDP sessions or other ongoing SSH. Okay, but those are your limits. So there you go, got that one. Can the Bastion HTTPS be given access to an end user without logging into the Azure portal? No, not currently. It's because they're using really Azure as your front door to that. I shouldn't say front door because that's a product. However, do understand that you have the ability to grant people access through your portal, right? And very controlled, very limited access. So in other words, if I had a user and I just wanted that user to be able to get in via Bastion, right? It's a contractor and they have to perform some maintenance on an application that's running on a server in Azure, right? As long as they've got a Microsoft identity, whether it's an Azure AD identity or it could actually just be, say, a Hotmail identity or a Gmail identity, you can actually add them into Azure AD as a guest user, and then you can give them specific rights. So then they could go through Azure AD and all they would see is exactly what you give them. So, you know, the ability to connect to that virtual machine. All right, so, you know, that's kind of the other way around. Is Bastion basically a firewall or a proxy server? It's really kind of a proxy server with a very specific purpose, right? It only works right now for RDP and SSH. It's not a generic general one where you can set it up, right? And it only works, again, through the portal. So you can think of it as a proxy server, but again, think of it as a kind of a very purpose-built and specific proxy server. What is the performance users can get in comparison to on-premises? That is from Umakant, and I am not going to attempt to pronounce your last name. I apologize. And the answer is that is a huge it depends question. Now, Microsoft has some performance metrics that they will share with you. If you, for example, are in the same region and you've got virtual machines that are connecting to each other from within the same region, then their performance is actually based on their network interface. And you can have multiple network interfaces, and different tiers of virtual machines have different performance capabilities at their network interface. If you're connecting from outside, then there are a number of elements that are going to define that. First of all, if you're using VPN or ExpressRoute, then you are going to have certain pre-specified performance capabilities, okay? And the more you pay, the more performance you get. If you're going over the public internet, that becomes almost impossible to answer. Now there is, and I can look this up, I'm not gonna do it right now, but there's actually a really cool performance page. Hopefully it's still there. I haven't used it in a little bit, and it's a private application that's running in Azure. And what it allows you to do is run all kinds of performance tests from wherever you are to different regions in Azure, right? So if I wanted to see, what is the latency connecting from my home office in Raleigh, North Carolina, to a machine that's running, or just to the region that's maybe in the West Europe, I can actually get that information pretty easily. But it's kind of a, that's kind of a broad topic there. Okay, hopefully that answered that question. So we've talked about Bastion. Most of my well, first two questions are Bastion. We've answered the third question. I guess that's the royal we. Regarding Azure VPN, can the allowed IP subnets be modified while the VPN is in production? i.e., does adding or removing the subnets cause the VPN to reset and disrupt the existing traffic from other allowed subnets? Mohammed, that is a fantastic question. And here's the thing. I am not going to attempt to answer that off the top of my head. I have what I am 90% sure is the answer, and my 90% sure, well, I'm not even going to say what it is, because typically off the cuff, when I give a 90% answer, it's wrong half the time. But what I will do is I will take that question, and I'll just go make sure I verify my answer, and I will email you the answer. I will also bring that up as one of the answers in the Q&A session that we're doing on Friday. Okay, is it possible to span an L2 network with the VPN gateway? Okay, sort of. Here's the way that works, and there's good documentation on that, and I'm just going to tell you, other than reading a couple of cool blog posts, I have not done anything with this. But it is possible to do. In order to do it, what you need is an appliance on each side. Okay, so rather than using the straight VPN gateway and just using that from Azure, you're also going to have to deploy an appliance in Azure that's going to support that, as well as configuring an on-prem environment. I know that's a little bit vague, but that is simply because I can tell you the simple answer is yes, but it's also not straightforward. Does Azure have a IPS IDS solution for ingress, egress traffic? Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to be, I'm terrible with acronyms because I work with a bunch of Cisco people who live in acronyms. IPS IDS, I want to make sure that I get exactly what you are talking about. Okay. Are we talking about threat protection? I assume that is what we are talking about. Okay. And the answer is yes, it does. You actually have something called advanced threat protection. And what that's doing is it is looking for various traffic patterns. Again, as you said, both ingress and egress traffic patterns. And it is acting as a guard. Now, Sentinel can do that, but you can also have separately, Sentinel's more kind of, I don't want to say that it's forensic because it is running real time, right? But it's looking over your logs, right? Whereas the advanced threat protection is a little bit more active. So that would be the simple answer to that question. Okay. The simple answer is yes, as long as I understood the question correctly. All right, that is it for the questions that I see. All right, as I said, I could, if anybody's interested, go ahead and knock out that SQL Server. I think I'll go ahead and do that if there aren't any more questions. If you want to hang out and see that and watch the instructor stumble through it just a little bit, it won't be bad. I can show you that. Otherwise, we are done. I do want to thank everybody for coming out. And I tell you, before I go, and we're going to do things a little bit out of order here, and I'm going to have fun with my digital marketing person. Brittany, I'll let you come back on. Just any closing remarks that you would have, and then I'll finish out with that little bit of demo.
Yep, thank you, Tracy. Once again, thank you guys for attending. Tracy is going to stay on for a little bit longer if you have any other questions and to do that demo. I did want to run through just a couple of things one more time in case you missed it at the beginning of the webinar. This webinar was being recorded and you will get a copy of this sent to your email later on today. Also, we are currently doing a Microsoft Surface giveaway for Cloud Week. So you are getting an automatic entry. I'm pulling from these people at the end of the week. But also, if you'd like a couple more entries, you can attend other events this week. The next one that we have that you can actually attend and register with, or your attendance is a registration basically, is our Q&A later on this week on Friday between 2 and 4 p.m. You don't have to show up the entire time, but if you have a question for Tracy, you want him to answer live, or if you just want to see what other people are asking, please be sure to come to that webinar. Also, you can register on our Cloud Week website. That link is now live. I'll put a link in the chat in just a moment with that. But if you go all the way to the bottom of the Cloud Week page, there should be a registration form now where you can register, and that will give you another entry. So please be sure to do that. And then we will be announcing that winner after the Q&A on Friday. So we'll email the winner, make sure we can contact them. As long as they're okay with being announced, we'll announce them to the public too. But yeah, we're giving away that Microsoft Surface Pro. And then also just be on the lookout. We have events all this week. A couple new courses from Tracy came out this week, as well as a couple of videos that he's making specifically for Cloud Week. We have 2 of them coming out, one tomorrow and the day after as well. So be on the lookout for those as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Tracy.
All right, thank you so much. And also thanks to Zoom that reminded me that I was muted. Okay, so what I was doing, and hopefully didn't distract you too much from what Brittany was saying, because again, Surface giveaway, Surface Pro giveaway. What I did was I came back in and I re-logged in and set up my SQL Server connectivity correctly. So I've now generated just a little bit of traffic. I just ran a query. Here I can run another query. A terrible select star from videos. There we go. It doesn't have videos because videos is under courses. So let's try that. And run. And I should get some data. There we go. That was a lot of time for 3 lines of data. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back under auditing, and I'm going to now view my audit logs. And this is the exciting part. And haha, there is something wrong with their audit log. That is so sad. Well, that's not going to change it. Oh, there we go. What do you know? It is working at the server level. All right. And if I run into this, what I can see here is it's showing me that exact query that I ran. And I ran it without a semicolon, which is terrible practice. Sorry about that. All right. And then I can go and I've got, oh, it really is not being happy right now. Well, you did see one. So if I can get it to give me another one. Back to our server log. All right. So I've got database authentication. There's a failed batch. Right. That's when I tried to select straight from videos. So everything that I'm doing is being logged, and I'm logging it both at the server level and at the database level, even though the database level is something is a little bit off kilter with it. Okay, but that is database auditing. Now, I would see if it wasn't being a bit picky, because I only have one database and I've got auditing at both the database and the server level, I should see exactly the same entries at the database level. So if you have it at the server level, unless you just want to be able to separate it out and just go into one specific database, there's no real need to have it across multiple databases. And that is that. All right, I'm looking, I'm not seeing any other questions. So a little bit faster than the first half of this. I'm gonna go ahead and call this a day. Thank you all very much for coming into this. Do want to remind you that we've got a number of Azure learning paths that are active at INE. We now have a new cloud pass, which makes them even more affordable. So you can always check that out. Just go to INE.com and take a look at our cloud pass. And as many folks have asked about, the security is coming. It's coming shortly. So again, thank you very much. Hope you check out some more Cloud Week activities, and hopefully you'll be able to catch some of the courses. Thanks again.